Hello everyone, Daryl Pritchard here with you once again. This is going to be a very dry video because it's just showing you a document that I prepared. But I thought it might be worthwhile to explain my conclusions based upon the other two videos I've shared where I demonstrated the problem of the ZWO ASIAIR Pro creating in the course of a series of exposures with my DSLR, a Nikon D850, a series of backlogged images that in the most recent example I showed where I was outside doing a live session, I had slewed my mount around to the home position, so basically aimed toward Polaris. We took an image, a preview image with the Nikon, and when we saw the screen update and then annotated it, we saw it was still the southern sky, an image of the Witch Head Nebula and the star Rigel being obvious. So I switch over to the guide scope, take another image, and that shows a correct plate solution. As I recall, it did not show Polaris annotated, which is kind of odd, but it's probably the very narrow field of view there for the guide scope at 840 millimeters effectively. That's probably just off in another part of the sky. So I slewed to another area around Cassiopeia, and we saw there a valid star, Navi I believe it was. And yet when I then again took another image of using my DSLR, once again we got the southern sky back. And as I did these, one thing I noticed was that even from my still images, there was some variation in them in that the exposure seemed a little different. And I was really puzzled, why was this going on? And we're going to see the answer for that in this presentation here. So let's just go ahead and talk about what I've done. First off, here, this first page, I'm just summarizing the two key problems that result from this. And let me go ahead and scroll on down because you can always pause that and read it if you really want to. I summarize, what I'm using in my testing. So we've got the ASIAIR Pro, my Nikon D850, and then how I've got things connected through a passive USB hub, and my ASIAIR app is hosted on my Samsung Galaxy tablet. The scenario, I basically have two sequences, two Autorun sequences I create, each of them comprised of 3 sets of subs, lights, darks, and biases, 5 subs each, for a total of 15 subs per Autorun sequence. And here I'm referring to them as light 1, light 2. Later I'm going to show you I'm abbreviating these as L1, L2, etc. for lights, D1, D2 for darks, B1, B2, etc. for biases. And I was just using a test document that I created that had the numbers on each page, and I sequenced through, captured images of each page as I flipped the pages, so that every photo was unique. And by numbering these pages, uniquely as light 1, light 2, light 3, etc., then I can start seeing a pattern emerge that explains what's going on. So there's the rest of the steps, pretty much what I've kind of summarized here. And the thing to note about this, I really do believe this is most likely having to do with non-astro cameras. In other words, whatever is approved by ZWO as compatible with the ASIAIR Pro, namely some DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. Those cameras have to create raw data that the ASIAIR Pro then converts to FITS files. I'm assuming, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm assuming that an astro camera will do onboard processing of the image it captures and create the FITS file on the camera before it's actually sent or pulled off by the ASIAIR Pro. The result being that the ASIAIR Pro can simply take that FIT file, save it, and display it to the tablet, your screen, whatever you're using. And yet for the raw conversion to FITS, it's pretty obvious there would probably need to be some temporary area, working area, where file conversion is being performed. And then whether it's a raw file or a fit file, whether it's a processed raw to fit or a as received raw to fit, astro versus non-astro camera, either way, that is then saved off to your USB storage. And for the DSLR, since it's got that intermediate process for conversion, I think that is the source of where these problems are arising, and ZWO just needs to figure out a way to do better image management internally so that this does not happen. So let's go ahead and see what happens. And what I'm showing here in this table, I've got one row labeled captured. So that is what I actually captured to the camera card, my D850. And then the second row below it is what I observed on the screen of the tablet. So in our first auto run sequence, we captured 5 lights, L11, L21, 314, 151, 5 darks, 5 biases. And yet, while the very first image was correctly displayed, L11 showed up, the capture of L21 did not show up. Instead, we saw a duplicate of L11 created. And, I don't know really what's going on there, but let's just say that this L21 that was not seen is being pushed or backlogged somewhere into internal memory. So now when we go and capture L31, it did not get displayed either, but instead now the old backlogged image, L21, now gets pulled forward and put to the screen. L31, meanwhile, gets backlogged. Well, now we go to 4.1, and here we get again a duplicate of what was previously presented, L21. So now we've got L31 has not yet been shown. L41 just now captured but not shown is now added to the backlog. So we've now got 2 images backlogged that have not yet been presented. We go to light 5.1, and now we can grab L31 and bring it forward. 5.1 is not seen, it gets backlogged. So this becomes a cascading process that, these backlog images get stacked deeper and deeper. I don't know what the limits are of the internal memory in the ASIAIR for where it has this backlog being created, but what you can see here is I went through the full, what I call here the STEL Data 1 sequence, 15 subs, and by the time we get to the 5th bias, we have only seen on screen the 3rd dark. So whatever that is, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pairs of duplicates, and the first of the next pair of duplicates, which then branches over as we go and rename our auto run and perform another sequence. That second of that last pair of images is what gets presented as the first image here in that auto run sequence. So we go through that second auto run sequence, and once again you see the pattern there that emerges is we're getting consecutive pairs of duplicates such that, keeping in mind we've got 30 images here and we're being duplicated, for every image there's 2 images being shown, so 30 images divided by 2, okay, you get to the end of your 30th sub being captured and you're now fully 15 images backlogged. And that's where we lead into our preview mode captures. Now, when I had first seen this problem, I thought it was something occurring in preview mode. And yet what was going on was I was pretty commonly going out and investigating framing of my target after a meridian flip, and hence pausing the auto run, and maybe I would do a preview mode capture, and wait a minute, this is not right. The orientation of the data, the way the image was orientated in the camera, the way the image was oriented in the viewfinder, or on the tablet rather, I'm sorry, I'm getting confused now, was not consistent with actual expectations upon where we were pointing. And it turned out this was not a preview mode capture issue. It's just that preview mode is now fishing out all of these backlogged images for every consecutive preview mode capture I take. Or, let's make this worse. Let's slew around back to the home position and perform a polar alignment. And let's do it with our camera, our main camera currently assigned, the DSLR. We take a picture, and of course in polar alignment the image is not shown. And polar alignment comes back and it says, hey, your target is way off, far too far away to perform a polar alignment for the North Celestial Pole. Why is that? Well, it's because internally what we're not seeing going on, it's grabbing an image from wherever in the past. And it says, you're too far away. So to me, it seems to be a very significant problem. I am very surprised there's not been more mention of it in some form or fashion. But it may simply be that people that have had problems getting correct plate solutions, maybe they've seen their mounts driven too far away during a target centering process, any of that, anything that relies upon a plate solution, if you've performed that after an auto run sequence, and not necessarily even requiring a meridian flip, but if you have paused or stopped your auto run for any reason, then there may very well be this accumulated backlog of images based upon how long your auto run has executed for. So let's say if I go out and image the witch head sequence up to the meridian and I've done 60 captures, then according to this, where I had done 30 captures, I had half as many backlogs. So in the case of the witch head, I might have as many as 30 backlogged images, assuming the ASIAIR Pro has the internal memory sufficient to actually store all of those down. As I said, I don't know the storage capacity internally for the ASIAIR, but to me it very clearly does have this internal memory where it's buffering these images off. Now, if you're wondering how did I verify that, or how do I come to see that, whenever I'm doing my auto run capture, obviously I'm capturing either to the micro SD card or to my external USB drive. So what I did in this activity, I set up my external flash drive as my capture device, went through the 2 auto run sequences, then removed the USB card. So all of our processed raw to fit files are now on this USB thumb drive. So by pulling the card, they're no longer available to the ASIAIR Pro to go find in its backlog. Next, before proceeding, I reconfirmed that the internal micro SD card was emptied. So I went and did a clear there. So for everything that I could tell with respect to user accessible memory, we had no images available. And yet, when I then go and performed a capture and successive captures, I actually saw 15 images, 15 distinctly different images showing up on my tablet. So these are presumably they're converted FITS files being shown, and for my Nikon camera, that's a roughly 50 megabyte RAW that converts to approximately a 90 megabyte FIT file, and 15 of those is about almost 1.5 gigs of memory. Not quite, close enough. So if this is the full FIT file being saved somewhere, that's that's pretty sizable memory usage internally in the ASIAIR Pro. If on the other hand it for some reason is creating almost more like a thumbnail image, a much lower resolution image that it could still perform plate solutions on, use that to source the screen data with, things of that nature, then obviously it wouldn't require quite as much memory. I mean, it could easily be a 1 megabyte image and probably have enough data there to work with, knowing that my ASI 120 camera is 1280 by 960, so it's a 1.2 megabyte image that it creates, and I don't know what the corresponding file size is for that, but if it was a small file being created temporarily for these other purposes, then you might could have hundreds of those being saved internally apart from your main external user memory devices. So, people that haven't seen this problem, I don't have any reason to believe this could be unique to my ASIAIR Pro. This kind of repeating pattern is very clearly something indicative of a software design issue, in my opinion. If it was more random, had nothing about it that we could discern as some, clear pattern, then it might be, maybe a bad chip somewhere, a hardware design failure of some sort. But it really appears to me likely to be in software, and hence software that we are all using who have the ASIAIR Pro. And likewise then, the problem probably does manifest for more people than they realize. And it's only if you're using raw files, and if you've somehow stumbled upon this problem as I have, and you've investigated it further, and you compare it to your FITS files, which you might never even look at, only then would you possibly start seeing that, okay, apples are not apples. We've got apples and oranges, or we've got apples and stale apples, whatever you want to call it. But if you've got an Astro camera, I don't know. It may not be a problem whatsoever. It could also be there that if this is a problem, let's say you've got a ZWO ASI 2600 MC, and you've shot 500 subs over an imaging session. That will be more reasonable. Let's just call it 200 subs. And you do that obviously as an auto run. If you've got 50 of those subs are backlogged and duplicated, but they're still there. I mean, you've still got 100 valid images somewhere. It might be that if you go through a full imaging sequence, pull your FITS files off, and are going through them in, let's say, Blink in PixInsight. You're clicking through your images to see if you notice any that jump out at you as bad. Well, if you're not dithering, or something that might create a noticeable image shift as you're viewing it, I dare say it might be easy to completely miss the fact that every other image you look at is a duplicate. And because over the course of a normal tracking session, if you're not changing your image framing at all, especially if there's no meridian flip, then it could very well be that it totally escapes you that the last image is not truly what you last captured. It may be much earlier in the evening, and you've just been looking at the first 100 files and they're duplicates. I think in general, if you're blinking through your files, people would probably notice this, but maybe not. I'm speculating. I'm truly speculating on how this problem could be inherent in both a Astro camera type process as well as non-Astro. But I think the odds are much less likely just by the nature of the beast, of how working with an Astro camera doesn't require as much processing. So that's probably all in the non-Astro side of the equation for how the software works. And that's what's going on. So thank you for watching. I hope this makes some sense, sheds some light. If you've had any observation of things, as I mentioned, if you plate solve on, if you're doing a polar alignment and you get a solution that says target too far away, make note of that. And especially if you're shooting with a non-Astro camera, go take a look after your session if you can. And I guess there the critical thing to do. Well, you're in polar alignment though, so you don't really know. You won't be able to look at the image associated with your polar alignment because you don't know what it was, where it's at. But in any case, that problem should only occur after you've done an auto run. So, assuming you have in fact done an auto run, go pull your FITS files that were saved and go through those very meticulously and look at every single image in sequence and see if pairs of them, as best you can tell, look to be identical. If you've got a 30 pixel random dithering going on, I would think there should be enough little shift in the image that even blinking through them fairly quickly, you would see some apparent movement. But likewise, if you can, look at your raw files. And let's just say you've got 50 images in each. Just go down randomly and choose the 17th file here and the 17th file here, and view them. If you're needing to view a FITS file, view it using ASI FITS View. That's probably the easiest way. And then view your raw in Adobe Camera Raw, whatever raw viewer you use, editor, and look at those two files and see if they are identical. If they aren't, you've got this problem. I almost guarantee it. So hopefully this will be helpful to someone. Most especially to ZWO. I really truly hope they can come back and they say, yes, we have seen and confirmed your problem. I just noticed here too that on the observed row for preview mode captures, you will notice out there I tacked on a 16th image that had shown me that I had looped now back around to the first preview mode. So I'd actually gotten through fully all 15 backlogged stale data images from the second sequence and was now picking up the first of the preview mode captures. So thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, by all means, let me know in the comments. Thank you.